Everyone faces resistance in life. There are people who doubt you, people who compete with you, people who quietly want to see you fail, and most people respond the same way. They react emotionally, they argue impulsively, they try to overpower opposition with force or volume. But real power does not come from reacting. It comes from understanding how people think, understanding what they fear, understanding what they desire, understanding what they unconsciously respond to. The strongest advantage you can have in any conflict is not strength, it is psychological awareness. Because the human mind follows patterns, predictable biases, emotional triggers, cognitive blind spots. And once you understand those patterns, you stop being controlled by situations and you start shaping them. In this video, we are exploring 7 psychological tactics used to control enemies, not through violence, not through confrontation, but through perception, strategy, and self-mastery. Because the highest form of power is not defeating others, it is mastering the psychology of influence, so nothing controls you again. This is Noir Human, exploring the dark side of human nature. Throughout history, power was never decided by who was physically strongest. It was decided by who understood people best. Kings did not rule by force alone. Generals did not win by weapons alone. Politicians do not control by logic alone. They control by shaping perception. The modern battlefield is not physical. It is psychological. It is reputation. It is narrative. It is social influence. It is emotional control. Most people lose conflicts not because they are weak, but because they do not understand the invisible rules of human behavior. Psychology does not just explain how people act, it explains how power actually works. Authority bias is the human tendency to trust and obey people we perceive as higher status. The brain assumes that confidence equals competence. It assumes that titles equal truth. It assumes that authority equals correctness. Psychologist Stanley Milgram demonstrated this in his obedience experiments, where ordinary people were willing to harm others simply because an authority figure told them to, not because they were evil, but because their brains deferred responsibility upward. In everyday life, authority bias appears constantly. People trust doctors more than data. People follow managers even when they are wrong. People believe confident speakers more than careful thinkers. The dark implication is simple. People do not obey what is true. They obey what feels legitimate. In real life, this means that authority is not about being right. It is about appearing certain. Strategic awareness begins by noticing when you accept ideas simply because of who said them. Ask yourself whether you would still believe the same claim if it came from someone with no status. When navigating conflict, calm confidence creates more influence than emotional arguments. Speaking slowly, using fewer words, and remaining composed signals authority at a subconscious level. Authority is not volume. Authority is emotional control. Framing is not changing facts. Framing is changing how facts are interpreted. The human brain does not evaluate reality directly. It evaluates stories about reality. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different conclusions. A failure can be framed as defeat, or it can be framed as learning. A criticism can be framed as attack, or it can be framed as feedback. The facts stay the same. The meaning changes. Whoever controls the meaning controls the emotional response, and whoever controls the emotional response controls behavior. This is why propaganda works. This is why media shapes opinion. This is why first impressions dominate judgment. In conflict, the person who speaks first often sets the frame. Once a narrative is accepted, new information is interpreted through that lens. Strategic awareness means learning to ask what alternative interpretations exist. Instead of reacting to how a situation is presented, you examine how it is being framed. You stop arguing facts alone and begin questioning the story around those facts. Whoever defines the meaning defines the outcome. Social proof is the human tendency to follow the group. When people are uncertain, they look to others to decide what is real. Psychologist Solomon Asch demonstrated this when individuals denied obvious reality just to agree with a group, not because they were blind, but because social belonging feels safer than being correct. Social proof shapes behavior everywhere, in trends, in political beliefs, in workplaces, in online culture. If enough people believe something, the brain assumes it must be true, even when there is no evidence. The dark implication is that popularity feels more reliable than accuracy. Strategic awareness begins by observing group behavior before participating in it. Instead of immediately revealing disagreement, you first study how opinions are formed. You ask who benefits from the consensus. You notice who is silent. You notice who is rewarded. The crowd is not a mind, it is a mirror. Fear is the fastest way to override rational thought. When people feel afraid, their brains prioritize safety over logic. Fear creates urgency. Fear creates obedience. Fear creates dependency. Fear conditioning works by associating people or ideas with anxiety and threat. Over time, the brain stops analyzing. It reacts automatically. This is why fear-based messaging is so effective. This is why authoritarian systems rely on fear. This is why toxic relationships feel controlling. Fear makes people seek protection, and protection always feels like authority. Strategic awareness means learning to delay decisions under fear. When something feels urgent, you ask what happens if you wait. You notice emotional intensity. You separate threat from evidence. Urgency is the enemy of clarity. Gaslighting is the systematic distortion of someone's perception. It is not simply lying, it is making someone doubt their own memory and judgment. Instead of saying someone is wrong, gaslighting makes them feel confused. Over time, the person stops trusting themselves. They begin outsourcing reality to others. This creates psychological dependency. Once someone doubts their own mind, control becomes internal rather than external. In real life, gaslighting appears as repeated invalidation. You are imagining things. You are too sensitive. That never happened. Strategic awareness involves tracking patterns instead of isolated events. You write things down. You observe consistency. You trust behavior more than words. Confusion is not always accidental. Sometimes it is the tactic. The most addictive reward system is not consistency, it is unpredictability. The brain releases more dopamine when rewards are uncertain. This is why gambling is addictive. This is why social media is addictive. This is why unstable relationships are hard to leave. People do not chase pleasure, they chase the possibility of pleasure. This creates emotional dependency. Strategic awareness means noticing emotional volatility. If something feels intense but inconsistent, you examine whether you are chasing stability or stimulation. Predictability creates psychological freedom. Unpredictability creates attachment. Scarcity creates irrational urgency. When something feels rare, the brain assigns it higher value. Even when there is no objective difference, scarcity triggers fear of loss, and loss feels stronger than logic. This is why limited offers work. This is why competition increases desire. This is why pressure disables critical thinking. Strategic awareness means refusing to decide under artificial deadlines. You ask whether the value exists without pressure. You separate desire from urgency. Real value does not need fear to survive. Here is the final truth. These tactics are not evil. They exist because the human brain evolved for survival, not for truth. Every one of these mechanisms exists inside you. Authority, fear, social proof, Scarcity. They shape what you believe. They shape what you trust. They shape how you act. The real danger is not being influenced. The real danger is being influenced without knowing it. Because awareness does not make you powerful over others. It makes you powerful over yourself. And a person who understands how influence works cannot be easily controlled. This is Noir Human, exploring the dark side of human nature.